learning goal of this lesson is to identify the key idea that Nick Enright was attempting to convey in A Property of the Clan, considering the context, intended audience, and purpose that underpinned the composition of the play. Interestingly, Nick Enright initially refused to write A Property of the Clan. In 1991, Brian Joyce, the artistic director of Freewheels, Newcastle's professional theatre and education company, approached Enright to write a play exploring the rape and murder of Lee, a 14-year-old girl. Lee had been raped and murdered during an underage party on Stockton Beach, just outside of Newcastle, on the 3rd of November 1989. Enright told Joyce, "I couldn't take it on. It horrifies me too much." The difficulty of what I call movie of the week writing is that it's victims and villains, and to get any sort of dialectic going is very hard, because what kind of response can you have to rape and murder but the conventional one? Joyce, however, managed to convince Enright to take on the project when he said, "You don't understand what's happened in this community as a result of that event. There's a whole group of 16 and 17-year-old kids who cannot speak to each other or to any adult about the issues that it raised for them. They have been so damaged by being participants in this experience, or witnesses, or through having a sister or brother who was in the class or at the party or whatever, and it's become a taboo subject." In saying this, Joyce established a purpose for Enright to write A Property of the Clan. The play explored the causes and effects of the rape and murder, providing a forum where local young people could discuss their ideas, feelings and emotions. As such, the intended audience was a small one, consisting of young people in the Newcastle area. Personally, I think the issue of dysfunctional masculinity raised in the play is relevant to Australian society generally, rather than just the young people of Newcastle. I think Enright believed this too, and that's the reason why I suspect he felt the need to transform A Property of the Clan into Blackrock. Now that Enright had a purpose and intended audience for A Property of the Clan, he began interviewing Stockton locals about Lee's rape and murder. However, he deliberately distanced himself from the actual case. "I didn't talk to any of the participants. I didn't talk to anyone who was in any way involved in the investigation. That wasn't my interest." Instead, Enright believed that there was a play in the conflicting responses of the community to such a crime. Consequently, it wasn't the brutal rape and murder that piqued his interest, but rather the imaginative reconstruction of what the lives of the kids were like in that world. After conducting the interviews, Enright wrote A Property of the Clan, believing it to be ostensibly a work of fiction. He returned to Newcastle to conduct readings of the draft script, where he invited the community to respond to the play. Lee's family and many members of the Stockton community were extremely critical of A Property of the Clan, which they believed misrepresented Lee's story. This criticism intensified when Enright rewrote the narrative of A Property of the Clan into a new play, Blackrock, which he later also transformed into a film. In an essay discussing Blackrock, David Berthold, who directed the first production of the play in 1995, responded to the criticism of Blackrock's link to Lee, arguing that Blackrock does not focus on the rape and murder. Instead, he asserts, it is very interested in the underlying causes of the murder. It hones on the social and cultural forces that can lead a group of boys to do such a horrific thing, and in how the rape and murder affects those left behind. Although Berthold was discussing how the event of the rape and murder was made secondary to its causes and effects in Blackrock, I believe he could equally have been referencing A Property of the Clan. In both plays, the rape and murder occurs off stage, and a consequence of this dramatic choice is that both plays are more about the cause and effect than the event. So that leads us to the question, what are the social and cultural forces that led male characters in A Property of the Clan to rape and murder? The construction of masculine identity is arguably the most powerful force in A Property of the Clan, a title dripping with sexism. The phrase comes from a psychological report on Matthew Webster, who was convicted for Lee's murder. The report stated, Webster attacked Lee, not so much because she would not let him have sex with her, but because she became the living proof that even a slut, a property of the clan, thought he was not good enough to have sex with. Webster's assessment of Lee was that she was a slut, and therefore he had the right to do what he wanted with her. Enright was criticised for misrepresenting Lee, Webster and Stockton, but I believe that Tracy actually represents Australian women. The setting in the play represents Australian society generally, and Rico represents the archetypal boy's boy, oozing misogynistic masculinity. I'd argue that the most significant social and cultural forces that led male characters in A Property of the Clan to rape and murder is the false belief that real men need to be powerful like Rico. I believe Enright's key idea in A Property of the Clan is that the association of masculinity with power is destructive. Through his play, Enright held up a mirror to Australian society, revealing how men seek to subjugate women. Philip Rouse, who directed a 2013 production of A Property of the Clan, stated in an interview that, when looking at this material as a straight white male, and especially while reflecting on your teenage years, realising how much you were in thrall of this conservative blueprint can really take you by surprise. You want to believe you're a good person, but maybe that wasn't always the case. The process of shedding damaging notions of masculinity, particularly attitudes towards women, is a long one, and one that not every male goes through. And in working on this play, if it forces you to engage with attitudes you have shed and admit you understand them from the inside, that is what I mean by being honest as a director. I don't believe that these damaging notions of masculinity is limited to Australian society. The play's exploration of how men use language and violence to assert their power over women exposes a truth that seems to be relevant across all societies. Enright once commented, "The play Black Rock appears to be about powerful men and women who are in their command. But in fact, the psychological truth is that most Australian men are afraid of women." He expanded on this idea in another interview when he said, "The fear of women is so paramount in this society. I think the most terrifying thing that I ever read, and I think it's probably true, is something Gore Vidal said, which is, if only women knew how much men hate them." In A Property of the Clan, Rachel seems to realise men's true feelings towards women at the end of the play, when she responds to Jade's question. What was the last thing she saw? Hatred. Just hatred. Blind hate. And that's it, you've made it. To recap the main points of the lesson, I analysed the context, intended audience and purpose of A Property of the Clan. Brian Joyce suggested using the rape and murder of Lee as the inspiration for the play. Initially, Nick Enright refused, as he believed the content was too confronting, which limited an audience's ability to respond to it. However, Joyce believed that there was a need for the play. The intended audience was the damaged young people of Newcastle, who were unable to talk about the event and the serious issues it raised. The purpose of the play was to explore the causes and effects of the rape and murder, providing a safe forum for young people to discuss their thoughts, feelings and emotions. I suspect that these discussions may have centred on what it means to be a man and what it means to be a woman. For me, the key idea in the play is that the association of masculinity with power is destructive. So, as the orchestra music begins to play, the final thing for me to do is to thank you so much for watching.